Stop being too nice. It's destroying your respect. Stoic wisdom. There is a dangerous lie many people believe. They think that if they are kind enough, patient enough, available enough, forgiving enough, they will be loved. They believe that if they keep giving, keep understanding, keep sacrificing, people will finally appreciate them. But life teaches a cruel lesson. The more available you become, the less valuable you appear. The more you tolerate disrespect, the more disrespect you attract. The more desperate you are to be liked, the less people truly respect you. And this is the painful truth. Being too nice is not making your life better. It is slowly destroying your respect. Not because kindness is weak, but because uncontrolled kindness without boundaries becomes permission. Permission for others to use you, ignore you, test you, drain you, and walk away as if your presence meant nothing. The Stoics understood something most people never learn. You can be good without being soft. You can be kind without being available to everyone. You can be loving without becoming easy to manipulate. And you can be peaceful, while still being powerful. In this video, you will learn why being too nice is secretly ruining your dignity, why people stop respecting those who cannot say no, and how Stoic wisdom can help you become calm, respected, and impossible to control. Because the world does not reward those who beg to be accepted. It respects those who know their worth, control their emotions, and walk away when necessary. If you are tired of being overlooked, tired of being taken for granted, tired of being the one who gives everything and receives little in return, then this message is for you. Watch until the end, because by the time this video is over, you will never confuse being nice with being weak again. Most people are not too kind. They are too afraid. Afraid of conflict, afraid of rejection, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of losing people, so they disguise fear as kindness. They say yes when they want to say no. They smile when they feel hurt. They apologize when they did nothing wrong. They over-explain themselves to avoid being disliked. They tolerate what should never be tolerated. And because it looks polite on the outside, they call it being nice. But Stoicism asks a deeper question. Is it truly kindness, if it is driven by fear? Because real kindness is chosen from strength. People-pleasing is chosen from insecurity. There is a difference. A strong person can help you and still walk away. A strong person can forgive you and still refuse your presence. A strong person can speak gently and still set hard boundaries. But a weak person often gives not from love, but from the desperate hope that giving will buy loyalty. And that is where the suffering begins. The tragedy of being too nice is not simply that others may use you. The deeper tragedy is that you begin to abandon yourself. Every time you silence your truth to keep someone comfortable, you betray yourself. Every time you allow disrespect because you fear confrontation, you teach people that your boundaries are optional. Every time you overextend yourself for those who would never do the same for you, you lower your own value in your own eyes. This is why being too nice slowly destroys your respect. Not only in the eyes of others, but in the mirror. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that a person must act according to reason, not according to the emotional demands of the crowd. And what is more irrational than sacrificing your peace, your dignity, your self-respect, just to be temporarily accepted by people who do not even value what you give? Think carefully about this. If someone only likes you because you never challenge them, never say no, never express your needs, never make them uncomfortable, then they do not like you. They like your compliance. They like your convenience. They like the version of you that asks for nothing, requires nothing, and tolerates everything. That is not love, that is utility. And the moment you stop being useful, many of these people disappear. This is one of the hardest lessons in life. The overly nice person believes that giving more will create deeper bonds. But often, the opposite happens. When you are always available, your presence loses weight. When you are always forgiving, your standards lose meaning. When you are always accessible, your absence no longer matters. Scarcity creates value, not because you should become cruel, not because you should become cold-hearted, but because what is always available is rarely respected. The Stoic does not chase respect by performing for others. The Stoic builds respect by becoming internally solid, by becoming someone who can say, "I am willing to help. But I will not be used. I am willing to love. But I will not beg. I am willing to forgive. But I will not keep inviting disrespect. I am calm. But I am not weak." This is the transformation, and it begins when you stop confusing self-erasure with virtue. Many people were raised to believe that goodness means endless tolerance. That if you are truly kind, you must always understand, always forgive, always stay, always sacrifice, always endure. But this is not wisdom. This is how people lose themselves. Even nature does not operate this way. A tree gives shade, but not to the axe forever. The ocean is beautiful, but it also has boundaries. The lion is calm, but never harmless. You too must learn this balance. Because the world is full of people who can sense when someone is afraid to lose them. And once they sense that fear, they begin to test how far they can go. They cancel plans without apology. They speak to you carelessly. They take your help for granted. They ignore your needs. They call only when they want something. They disappear when you are struggling, and return when they need comfort. And each time you accept it silently. You send a message, not with words, but with behavior. You say, "This is allowed." People rarely respect what has no cost. If losing you feels impossible, they will treat you as if you are replaceable. This is why the Stoics taught detachment. Not emotional numbness, not bitterness. Detachment means this: you stop needing every person to stay. You stop fearing every misunderstanding. You stop collapsing every time someone withdraws affection. You stop bargaining your dignity for temporary connection. Because once you are no longer desperate to be liked, you become harder to control. And once you are harder to control, people begin to feel your presence differently. You do not need to shout. You do not need to threaten. You do not need to become aggressive. You simply become clear. Clear in what you accept. Clear in what you reject. Clear in what you tolerate. Clear in when you leave. That clarity creates respect. Not everyone will like it, but that is the point. A person who needs everyone's approval becomes a prisoner of everyone's opinion. The Stoic refuses that prison. Epictetus taught that if you want to improve, be willing to be thought foolish by others. This means that if saying no makes someone call you selfish, let them. If setting a boundary makes someone call you cold, let them. If protecting your peace makes someone misunderstand you, let them. Because people who benefited from your lack of boundaries will always complain when boundaries appear. And that complaint is not proof that you are wrong. It is proof that the old version of you was easier to use. This is why change feels uncomfortable. When you stop being too nice, you may feel guilt. You may feel selfish. You may feel like you are becoming mean. But often, what you are really becoming is honest. For the first time, you are no longer pretending. For the first time, You are no longer abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. For the first time, your kindness is becoming intentional, instead of compulsive. That is real power. Real power is not dominance. Real power is self-command. The ability to remain calm when someone pushes your limits. The ability to say no without hatred. The ability to walk away without drama. The ability to give without expecting worship. And the ability to stop giving when giving becomes self-destruction. This is Stoicism. It teaches you that your peace is not something to trade. Your dignity is not something to negotiate. And your value is not determined by how useful you are to people who would never sacrifice for you. So if you have spent your life being the reliable one, the understanding one, the forgiving one, the one who always checks in, the one who always makes excuses for others, the one who stays even after being disrespected, hear this clearly. Your kindness is beautiful, but without boundaries, it becomes a weapon turned against you. You do not need to become cruel. You do not need to become bitter. You only need to become disciplined. Disciplined enough to recognize when your kindness is no longer a virtue, but a habit of self-betrayal. And once you understand that, everything changes. Because respect begins the moment you stop offering unlimited access to a limited soul. There is a silent law in human behavior that many people never notice until it has already cost them deeply. The more available you are, the less valuable you often appear. This truth sounds harsh. It may even sound unfair. After all, shouldn't loyalty be appreciated? Shouldn't reliability be respected? Shouldn't showing up matter? In a healthy world, yes. But in real life, something strange happens. What is rare is noticed. What is constant becomes background. What is limited feels valuable. What is unlimited feels ordinary. And if you are always there, always replying, always helping, always waiting, always forgiving, always reachable, always ready, people begin to feel your presence the same way they feel the air. Necessary, perhaps. Useful, maybe. But no longer special. No longer respected. No longer consciously valued. This is why over-availability quietly destroys attraction, authority, and emotional weight. Not because being present is wrong, but because constant access removes the sense of consequence. If someone knows you will answer every time, they stop thinking before they disappear. If someone knows you will always forgive, they stop fearing the cost of carelessness. If someone knows you will always make time, they stop respecting your time. If someone knows you will always stay, they stop appreciating your presence. This is not always intentional. Many people do not wake up and decide to disrespect you. They simply adapt to what your behavior teaches them. And if your behavior says, "No matter how you treat me, I remain available," then their mind learns, there is no risk here. And where there is no risk, there is often no reverence. This is why people who are always trying to prove loyalty often end up feeling invisible. They text first. They check in first. They apologize first. They fix the tension first. They make the plans. They keep the bond alive. They maintain the emotional labor. And after all of that, they still wonder why they are not valued. Because effort alone does not create respect. Standards create respect. The Stoics understood that your time is part of your life. Every hour you give away is a piece of existence you will never get back. Seneca wrote about how people protect their money but waste their lives. And this is exactly what the overly available person does. They guard their image. They guard other people's comfort. They guard everyone else's emotions. But they do not guard their time. They give it away cheaply. To people who did not earn it, to conversations that drain them, to relationships that confuse them, to obligations they secretly resent, to emotional chaos that steals their peace. And then they wonder why they feel empty. The answer is simple: because anything you give without discipline will eventually be taken without gratitude. Time included, availability included, attention included, presence included. If you want respect, you must understand this deeply. Your energy must feel chosen, not automatic. When your attention is automatic, it loses impact. When your presence is automatic, it loses weight. When your response is automatic, it loses value. When your forgiveness is automatic, it loses meaning. The Stoic does not become unavailable to play games. The Stoic becomes intentional. Intentional with time. Intentional with access. Intentional with emotional investment. Intentional with effort. This is the difference between maturity and desperation. A desperate person fears absence. A mature person understands the power of space. Space reveals everything. Space reveals who reaches out when you stop doing all the work. Space reveals who notices your silence. Space reveals who only values you when you are useful. Space reveals who is curious about you, and who is merely accustomed to you. Most people are terrified of creating space because they believe silence means loss. But often, silence means truth. If you stop texting first for a week, who notices? If you stop fixing every argument, who cares enough to repair? If you stop making yourself emotionally available on demand, who respects your limit? If you stop chasing, who comes closer? These are not games. These are revelations. The overly available person often lives in illusion. They believe they're deeply valued, but in truth, they're deeply dependent on. Those are not the same thing. To be depended on can feel flattering. It can feel important. It can make you feel needed. But being needed is not the same as being respected. Sometimes people need your service, your attention, your emotional labor, your patience, your forgiveness, without ever truly valuing you. That is why Stoicism teaches detachment from role. You are not your usefulness. You are not your availability. You are not your constant presence in someone else's life. Your worth does not rise because someone needs something from you. And it does not fall because you stop giving it. This is where many people suffer. They build their identity around being the one who is always there, the dependable one, the helper, the peacemaker, the fixer, the loyal one, the emotional support, the patient one. And while those traits can be beautiful, they become dangerous when they are the only reason people keep you around. Because then your fear becomes, if I stop giving, I will be forgotten. And that fear creates slavery. You remain available not because you want to, but because you are terrified of what happens if you stop. That is not love. That is emotional captivity. The Stoic must break this. You must become willing to let silence test the relationship. You must become willing to let absence reveal reality. You must become willing to stop performing loyalty to see whether there is genuine reciprocity. Because one painful week of truth is better than 10 years of false closeness. Understand this. Not everyone deserves immediate access to you. Not everyone deserves instant replies. Not everyone deserves unlimited emotional labor. Not everyone deserves your best energy. And no, this does not mean you become arrogant. It means you become discerning. A disciplined person does not hand out their energy like loose change. They invest it. Where there is mutual respect, where there is consistency, where there is emotional maturity, where there is reciprocity, where there is integrity. This is why selective presence creates respect. When people know your time is valuable, they approach differently. When they know you are not desperate for attention, they feel your stability. When they know you are not waiting around, they sense your independence. When they know you can disappear without bitterness, they recognize your strength. There is power in not being overly reachable. There is power in not reacting immediately. There is power in not answering emotional chaos with emotional urgency. There is power in making people feel that your peace has structure. That your life is not an open door for random access. That your attention is not public property. That your calm cannot be summoned on command. This is not manipulation. It is self-governance. A Stoic understands that inner order must be protected. If you allow every person, every message, every demand, every emotional storm to enter your mind the moment it arrives, you are not living. You are being managed by interruption. And a person ruled by interruption cannot become powerful. Power requires stillness. Power requires intentionality. Power requires the ability to say, I will respond when I choose. I will help when it is right. I will engage when there is mutual respect. I will not allow access to become entitlement. That final sentence matters, because many people confuse access with ownership. Just because they have known you for a long time, they think they own your time. Just because you were once always available, they think they are entitled to your energy. Just because you helped them through difficult seasons, they think your support should remain automatic. But your growth requires an ending to that pattern. The old version of you may have answered immediately. The old version of you may have rearranged your life for people who barely noticed. The old version of you may have confused fast replies with love. The old version of you may have felt guilty for not being reachable. But the Stoic version of you understands. Availability is not proof of value. Restraint is restraint with time. Restraint with access. Restraint with emotional investment. Restraint with attention. Because what you protect gains weight. What you ration gains meaning. What you do not give automatically becomes felt. And this is why your absence can be more powerful than your effort. When you are always present, people may not notice you. When you step back, they feel the difference. When you stop doing the emotional labor, the imbalance becomes visible. When you stop filling the silence, the emptiness becomes obvious. When you stop carrying the bond alone, the truth finally appears. This is why space is sacred. Space is where illusion dies. Space is where dependency is exposed. Space is where respect is tested. Space is where people reveal whether they value your soul or just your service. So do not fear becoming less available. Fear becoming so accessible that your presence means nothing. Do not fear silence. Fear the kind of constant noise that makes people forget your worth. Do not fear slowing down your responses. Fear the habit of being emotionally on call for everyone. Do not fear distance. Fear the intimacy of being used. Because a calm, selective, disciplined person will always command more respect than a frantic, overgiving, endlessly available one. And once you understand this, you stop trying to be everywhere. You stop trying to answer everything. You stop trying to maintain every bond. You stop trying to prove your loyalty through constant access. Instead, you become intentional. And intentional people are remembered. Because their presence is not common. It is earned. One of the most dangerous habits a person can develop is the inability to say no. At first, it looks harmless. It even looks admirable. You help when asked. You agree when needed. You step in when others avoid responsibility. You sacrifice your time. You rearrange your plans. You stretch your energy. You put your needs second. People praise you for it. They call you dependable, selfless, loyal, generous, understanding. Easy to be around, and for a while, that praise feels good. It makes you feel useful, needed, important, wanted, but beneath the surface, something darker is growing. Because every time you say yes to what drains you, you are often saying no to yourself. No to your peace, no to your time, no to your rest, no to your goals. No to your mental clarity, no to your emotional balance, no to your private needs, no to your own life. And the tragedy is this: many people don't even realize how much they're losing. Because they have been conditioned to believe that self-neglect is goodness. They think exhaustion means virtue. They think burnout means loyalty. They think resentment means sacrifice. They think being overwhelmed is proof that they are valuable. But Stoicism does not celebrate self-destruction. It teaches self-mastery. And there is nothing masterful about living a life where everyone else can decide how your energy is spent. If you cannot say no, then your life is not fully yours. Read that again in your mind. If you cannot say no, your life is not fully yours. Because a person who cannot refuse is not generous. They are vulnerable to control. Every request becomes pressure. Every favor becomes guilt. Every invitation becomes obligation. Every emotional demand becomes responsibility. Every disappointment becomes something they feel they must fix. And over time, this creates a deep internal fracture. Outwardly, you look kind. Inwardly, you become tired. Outwardly, you look helpful. Inwardly, you become resentful. Outwardly, you look patient. Inwardly, you become emotionally crowded. Outwardly, you smile. Inwardly, you feel trapped. This is the hidden cost of always saying yes. It creates a life that looks noble from the outside, but feels heavy from the inside. And eventually, the weight becomes too much. You start feeling irritated by small things. You begin dreading messages. You feel tension when your phone lights up. You become exhausted by people you once loved. You start fantasizing about disappearing. You feel guilty for wanting space. You feel selfish for needing rest. You feel confused because you are doing everything right. Yet you feel emptier than ever. Why? Because your soul knows what your mouth refuses to say. No, that word is sacred. And for many people, it is the word they were never allowed to use. Maybe they were raised to believe that refusing is rude. Maybe they were taught that love means always accommodating. Maybe they learned early that conflict is dangerous. Maybe they discovered that pleasing others kept them safe. So now as adults, they still carry the same conditioning. They call it kindness, but often it is fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being called selfish. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of being abandoned. And because of that fear, they become available to everything. But hear this clearly. Every yes has a price. If you say yes to everyone else's emergencies, you say no to your own peace. If you say yes to every interruption, you say no to your focus. If you say yes to every emotional burden people hand you, you say no to your inner stillness. If you say yes when your body is tired, you say no to your health. If you say yes when your spirit is already full, you say no to your own humanity. This is why the Stoic must learn selective refusal. not out of selfishness, out of alignment. Marcus Aurelius did not teach endless compliance. He taught discipline, and discipline means understanding that your energy is finite. Your time is finite. Your emotional bandwidth is finite. Your nervous system is not a public service. Your peace is not a communal resource. Your life is not a waiting room for everyone else's demands. Once you truly understand this, saying no stops feeling cruel. It starts feeling sane. But the transition is uncomfortable. Because the first time you say no after years of saying yes, you will feel guilt. Your chest may tighten. Your mind may race. You may overthink. You will leave. You may feel like you are doing something wrong. This is normal, because people-pleasing has withdrawal symptoms. And guilt is one of them. But guilt is not always a moral signal. Sometimes guilt is simply what happens when you stop living according to unhealthy conditioning. Sometimes guilt is the sound of an old identity breaking. Sometimes guilt is the emotional cost of becoming honest. And you must be willing to endure that discomfort. Because if you keep saying yes to avoid temporary guilt, you will eventually create permanent resentment. And resentment is one of the clearest signs that your boundaries have been violated for too long. Many people think resentment means they are becoming bitter. Not always. Often, resentment is your inner self screaming, "I have been ignored for too long. I have been sacrificed too often. I have been abandoned in the name of being good." That is why resentment should not only be judged, it should be investigated. Ask yourself, where am I saying yes when I want to say no? Where am I helping from fear instead of choice? Where am I available out of guilt instead of love? Where am I overgiving because I am afraid of losing approval? These questions are powerful, because the Stoic life is not about suppressing truth. It is about seeing truth clearly. And once you see it, you can act with reason. Reason says, not every request deserves acceptance. Not every crisis belongs to you. Every disappointment must be repaired by your energy. Not every person deserves access to your time. Not every relationship should be maintained at your expense. This is wisdom. The strong person is not the one who carries everything. The strong person is the one who knows what is truly theirs to carry. That is a Stoic principle. You are responsible for your character, your choices, your discipline, your responses, your values, but you are not responsible for managing everyone's emotions. You are not responsible for preventing every discomfort. You are not responsible for rescuing every unstable person. You are not responsible for making sure no one is ever upset with you. That burden is too heavy. And it is not yours. When you finally understand this, you begin to say no with less drama. Not angrily, not defensively, not with guilt-soaked essays. Just clearly, calmly, briefly. I can't do that. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. I need to pass. Not this time. These simple phrases can feel terrifying to someone who has spent years over-explaining. But they are powerful, because every clean no strengthens identity. Every calm refusal teaches your nervous system. My needs matter too. My time has value. Do not need permission to protect my peace. And over time, this changes everything. You stop living reactively. You stop becoming emotionally exhausted by default. You stop waking up already drained. You stop carrying obligations that were never yours. You stop overcommitting and under-recovering. You stop making your life a hostage to everyone else's urgency. And perhaps most importantly, you stop resenting the very people you claim to love. Because when your yes is honest, your kindness becomes clean again. Not forced. Not guilty. Not resentful. Real. That is the paradox. People think boundaries reduce love. In truth, boundaries purify it. Without boundaries, kindness becomes contaminated by exhaustion. Without boundaries, generosity becomes mixed with resentment. Without boundaries, support becomes a burden. Without boundaries, presence becomes pressure. But when you learn to say no, your yes becomes sacred. When you do help, it is intentional. When you do give, it is genuine. When you do show up, it comes from fullness. Not fear. And people can feel that difference. A person who says yes to everything has little weight. A person whose yes is selective has gravity. Because selectiveness signals self-respect. And self-respect commands respect. This is why the Stoic path is not about becoming unavailable to all, it is about becoming unavailable to what weakens you. Unavailable to manipulation. Unavailable to guilt-based control. Unavailable to endless emotional labor. Unavailable to compulsive rescuing. Unavailable to people who only call when they need something. Unavailable to obligations that steal your peace. And as you practice this, you will lose some people. Let that happen. Some relationships only survive because you keep over-functioning. Some people only stay because you keep over-giving. Some bonds only continue because you keep saying yes to things that slowly destroy you. If your boundary ends the relationship, the relationship was feeding on your lack of one. That truth is painful, but it is liberating, because it means what leaves was not sustained by love. It was sustained by access. And access is not sacred. Your soul is so protected not with anger, not with bitterness, not with revenge, with discipline, with clarity, with calm refusal. With the courage to disappoint others when necessary. Because every time you say no to what diminishes you, you say yes to the life you were meant to live. And that is where real strength begins. In the end, Stoicism does not ask you to become cold, it asks you to become clear. Clear about who deserves your energy. Clear about what you will tolerate. Clear about the difference between kindness and self-betrayal. Because being too nice is not always virtue. Sometimes it is fear. Fear of being rejected. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being left behind. Fear of disappointing others. And when fear controls your kindness, your kindness stops being strength. It becomes surrender. But the Stoic understands something most people learn too late. You can be kind without being weak. You can love deeply without losing yourself. You can remain calm without allowing disrespect. You can forgive without giving unlimited access. And you can walk away without hatred in your heart. That is true power, not loudness, not aggression, not revenge, but self-command, the ability to remain at peace, while refusing to be used. The ability to stay silent, when others expect a reaction. The ability to say no, without guilt. The ability to leave, without explanation. The ability to protect your soul, without apologizing for it. So from this day forward, stop shrinking yourself just to be accepted. Stop over-explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Stop offering unlimited access to people who treat your presence like it costs nothing. Stop giving your peace away in exchange for temporary approval. Stop calling self-abandonment being nice. Because the world changes the moment you do. When you stop chasing, your energy changes. When you stop reacting, your power changes. When you stop begging to be understood, your presence changes. And when you finally choose self-respect over approval, your life begins to change in ways you never imagined. Be kind, but let your kindness be disciplined. Be calm, but let your calm be strong. Be generous, but never become available to everyone. Be loving, but never desperate. Be peaceful, but never easy to control. Because the strongest person in the room is not always the loudest. It is often the one who has mastered themselves. The one who can remain calm in chaos. The one who can say no without guilt. The one who can walk away without anger. The one who can love without becoming weak. That is the Stoic path. That is real strength. And that is how respect begins. If this message spoke to you, remember this. Your kindness is a gift, not a guarantee. Protect it, guard it, and give it only where it is honored. Stay calm, stay disciplined, and above all, stay unshakable.